What's going on, you guys? It's your girl Diana back at you with another YouTube video. So in lieu of the Pokemon Journeys anime literally playing us and giving us more filler in the middle of the Masters 8 tournament, because this week's episode was basically just a recap of Go's Mew storyline, so we didn't really get any new info besides Eternatus returning, which makes me wonder if Eternatus is gonna play some kind of role in the Masters 8. But regardless, since we didn't really get a good episode to recap and review this week, I thought we would throw it back to the Johto region and review yet another epic battle that Ash had with my favorite rival that he's had in the anime so far, Gary. So if you are a Pokemon fan and have been for quite some time like I have, then feel free to give this video a thumbs up so that we can push it out into the YouTube algorithm and more people can join in on the nostalgia. And of course, if you're new here, hit that subscribe button so that you can see more Pokemon content from ya girl over here. And if you want more ways to support the channel, feel free to check out the merch in the link tree down below in the description, because I have all kinds of cool merch like this one that I'm wearing right now. But let's go ahead and hop into my recap and review of Ash versus Gary. So at this point in the tournament, it is a full-fledged 6v6 battle between the two, and they're set to take the stage on a rock-type battlefield. Naturally, Gary being Gary and actually being a good Pokemon trainer at this point in time, unlike Ash, because if anybody remembers what he used to be like in the old animes, it was a little rough for him. But Gary sends out a Nidoqueen, which is of course a ground type, so that he can take advantage of the rock-type battlefield. Ash, on the other hand, for whatever reason, decides I'm gonna throw out a Tauros. And I'm sure you could probably guess where this matchup ends, since Ash has no real plan and just says let's go ahead and charge in head first and hope for the best. And needless to say, it doesn't go well, and Tauros is now KO'd by Nidoqueen. At this point, Ash is like, maybe I should send out something with a little bit more strategy, and decides to go with Heracross. But Gary says, not today, boy, and switches out his Nidoqueen for Magmar, putting him yet again at the advantage. Ash decides to keep Heracross in, which ends up being probably the worst idea ever, because at one point Heracross literally ends up on fire. Like, we're talking full-blown, he's just in flames. But of course, we are talking about the Gen 2 anime, so some plot armor has got to come into play, which of course it does with Heracross, as he somehow blows away the flames with his wings. Maybe Ash should share some of his plot armor with me when I am at a type disadvantage. But because of our lovely plot armor, Heracross does manage to take out Gary's Magmar, and the two are now back on an even playing field. Gary then sends out Blastoise and makes quick work of Heracross. So then Ash decides to toss Muck into the mix. Muck does definitely hold his ground for a little bit, engulfing Blastoise at one point, but he does end up getting Hydro pumped into oblivion by Blastoise. Ash sees that things are not looking too good for Muck, so he's like, yeah, I should probably switch him out. And for once makes a smart decision and says, I'm gonna put in a grass type against the water type, since I would finally have a type advantage, and sends out Bayleaf. But even though Ash now has the type advantage, somehow Blastoise is still like, nah, I'm gonna take you out anyways, and manages to KO Bayleaf. Which RIP to Bayleaf, because that's literally one of my favorite Gen 2 Pokemon, because I am a sucker for Chikorita, Bayleaf, and Meganium. But now Gary has the advantage once again. After a little halftime break, which I'm not sure why that used to be a thing, but it was a thing, we come back to the battle and Gary leads off with his Arcanine and Ash sends in Snorlax. With Ash's Snorlax being one of his strongest and tankiest Pokemon, he uses Hyper Beam against Arcanine and manages to take it out. Gary then sends back in his Nidoqueen in an attempt to take out the Snorlax, but to no avail, as Snorlax manages to take out his Nidoqueen as well. At this point, Gary notices that although Snorlax may be super tanky and super strong, he's not very fast. So he uses this logic and sends out his fastest Pokemon, Scizor. This strategy seems to work for Gary, and he manages to take out Snorlax with a couple quick blows. Ash then sends back in Muck, and it looks like he may have the advantage here, as none of Scizor's attacks can manage to break through his jelly-like body. Gary then tells Scizor to use Swift, which finally lands a hit on Muck and manages to take it out. At this point, Gary still has 3 Pokemon left, and Ash is down to his final one, which is everybody's favorite Kanto starter, Charizard. Charizard manages to outspeed Scizor and takes it out, and at this point, Gary sends in Golem. Considering Golem is a rock-type Pokemon, Ash thinks that it's probably best to try to use use a Seismic Toss, but Seismic Toss fails since Golem is too heavy for Charizard to be able to pick up. Charizard does eventually manage to take out Golem, but at this point it's now Blastoise versus Charizard, so Charizard is at a huge type disadvantage. Gary knows that he's got to take out this Charizard ASAP, so he hits it with a Hydro Pump. Hydro Pump lands, but Charizard manages to power through and continue fighting. Blastoise then hits it dead on with a Headbutt, but Charizard still manages to stay in the fight and the two keep going at it, but Ash is getting concerned. He notices that whenever Charizard uses one of his fire type attacks, the rocks around him basically turn into molten lava, so he uses this logic to basically set the entire battlefield on fire, leaving Blastoise basically immobile in an ocean of lava. Gary attempts to cool down the battlefield and it's then covered in a thick mist. The mist clears and the two are going at it head on. Ash realizes that this is the perfect time for Charizard to attempt another Seismic Toss. With Blastoise not being as heavy as Golem, Charizard actually manages to pull off the Seismic Toss. Charizard slams Blastoise into the ground, and once the dust clears, we see the two are still standing tall. But after a couple of moments in true OG Pokemon anime form, Blastoise finally falls, and Charizard is our winner. Ash then stands there absolutely flabbergasted that he finally beat his #1 rival, Gary. And then in true Gary fashion, he literally just storms off and says, "Smell ya later." He doesn't actually say that, but I just imagine him being really angry and saying that in his head. So, final thoughts on this episode. Obviously, there was a ton of plot armor and OG anime logic going on in this battle, but overall, I did still think that it was really entertaining, and honestly, it was kind of satisfying for Ash to finally beat Gary. I mean, not that that victory lasts for long, because we all know that Gary literally annihilates Ash later on as well. But despite all of the OG anime silliness, I thought that this was actually a very clever battle. It was entertaining and actually had a couple of plot twists thrown in there, with Muck being able to stand its own against Scizor, Ash having to rethink his strategy against Golem, and finally the big climactic ending of Charizard beating Blastoise with a Seismic Toss. I give this episode a true rating of 7.5 out of 10, but if I'm going based on nostalgia, I would have to bump it up to a 9.5 just because, like I said, it was just really satisfying seeing Ash finally beat Gary. And I also love that they made it come down to the wire, especially since it looked like Gary was gonna absolutely destroy Ash and sweep his team, with him having 3 Pokemon left at one point and Ash literally just having Charizard. But let me know what you guys think of this battle down below in the comments. I want to hear your opinion, and let me know if there's any other battles that you would like me to recap and review in the future. But as always, thank you guys so much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys in the next one. Love you guys. Bye!